I've got two trail cameras here. They're both 4K capable, but both of these trail cameras have Wi-Fi. Okay, hi folks. If you've watched any of my other videos on trail cameras, you already know exactly where I am. So yeah, I'm back in Finland, and this is the stump where I've put bait out before for various different trail cameras on the trees that are behind the vlogging camera just now, and that is exactly what I'm going to do again right now. In here I've got some sort of mixed meat, sort of a patty of mixed meat, dog food. It's uncooked, so I have a feeling it'll be a bit better than the stuff I used last autumn. Looks like a big pile of turd to me. I'm glad I'm not eating it. It's not my favourite one that was comically named Barf. I couldn't find it. I think maybe they've stopped producing it, which I think is a crying shame because it's hilarious. But that's going on there. And yeah, I've got two trail cameras here, and they're both new. If you haven't watched my previous wildlife camera review from this location, cut the long story short, I was sent a camera from Dsoon, and I tried it against my trusty Bushnell Nature View, and one of the things that I had a real sort of issue with is that trail cameras often don't have a decent way of aiming them. My Bushnell has a plug-in viewer which makes lining it up and aiming it super easy. It's really good. And what I said in the other video is that some high-end cameras have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth connection to your smartphone that allows you to also do a live view aiming. And I think it was that triggered both Dsoon Hunt again and a company called Ceyomur to contact me and ask me if I wanted to try out some of their higher end trail cameras. And that's what I've got here. These are the Dsoon, I can't read the name of it because it's on underneath the strap there, but it's on the screen. So that's one from Dsoon, and then there's a CY95 from Ceyomur. They're both 4K capable. The Dsoon, the 4K is still at 10 frames a second. The Ceyomur 4K 30 frames a second. They both have quite high megapixel count for stills, but I have to admit I'm only going to take video, which is what I've been doing with trail cameras for quite a while now, to be fair. And so yeah, both of these are going to be set to their 4K settings, and both of these trail cameras have Wi-Fi and an app that you load onto your phone that should allow me to do some aiming. So what we'll do, I'll get the food set up and we'll get the wildlife cameras set up on the tree, and I'll talk you through aiming both of them using their apps. That already looks a lot more appetizing than the food I put out last time. And we'll set up the two cameras, and we're going to start with the Ceyomur camera. And there's another thing that is really obvious about this camera that I didn't mention yet. It's got a solar panel on it. and it's actually got an internal battery, which means that it can sort of keep itself charged and theoretically run for a long time in the field without having any extra batteries put into it. Now, I'm not going to leave this here for very long, but that is obviously quite a neat feature, that you'd be able to leave your camera out for, you know, maybe months in a location. So yeah, that's kind of cool. So we do a little bit of setup. We'll turn it on into its sort of setup mode. But yeah, it's quite a nice nice menu. I've set the video mode to 4K, and then what you do is button here to set up your Wi-Fi, and a little Wi-Fi symbol comes up. And I've already set this up previously, and there's an app that you have to get, and you have to, once you press that Wi-Fi button, you have to go into your Wi-Fi settings, and up comes a Ceyomur camera as a Wi-Fi network that you can connect to. You connect to it, and then you find their app, which is called Game Camera Pro, and once you're on Wi-Fi you can connect to the camera quite easily. And if you can see that, I hope so, there you go, we have a pretty much live view of what I can see out of this camera on my phone, and that is fantastic. So that means what I'm going to do is I'm going to close it up while that's all running, get the strap around the tree. Now we can see me, and we can see the stump. That's really good because I can aim it, I can twist it until the trees look like they're upright. There is a bit of a lag actually, I have to admit, but it's pretty good. And here, look, I'll show the camera. I don't know if that's being picked up, I hope so. You can see the pile of food there, you see my rucksack and my camera there. Now for the Dsoon camera, it's a little bit more complicated. You have to turn it on into its kind of on mode, and then you have to find their app, and you have to first do a Bluetooth thing and then a Wi-Fi thing in order to connect this, whereas this one's a bit easier because you can just tell it to turn on Wi-Fi and away you go. I'm not promising that it's working this first time. See, with both of these I've only used them once before, and it's maybe a little telling that this one I remembered how to just do it because it was really simple. And yeah, this doesn't seem to be at all obvious. It's not just press it and get going. You're faffing around, and yeah, I've put insect repellent on, but there are a lot of mosquitoes here, and there's even in this breeze, they're quite annoying. So yeah, I have to say I'm not particularly impressed with the, say, faffiness of having to set this thing up. It says it's connecting. Okay, I can access the settings remotely. That's kind of useful. Ah yes, now information, I then get a view from the camera up here in the screen, but unlike this Ceyomur camera, which had a live view for me, this is not live. I have to refresh it. So let's say I change the direction, I have to refresh it, confirm or cancel rather that I don't want to take an image, and then it will refresh the view up there. It's clunky, Dsoon, it's clunky. This was really simple to set up, so I mean, you know, I don't like to preempt any kind of review, but honestly, it should not be that much faff to connect a little local Wi-Fi network. It was, yeah, I don't know. One thing I will say in Dsoon's favour is that strap is bomb-proof. It's a really very solid strap. It's not going to go anywhere. So I've roughly aimed it, point it in the right direction, do this faffy business of aiming, of resetting the thing, do a little bit of adjustment. Unlike its smaller counterpart that I reviewed here before, the back of this camera is not as nice in terms of having that nice curve, so I find myself using sticks again. Right, again, now that looks like it's pointing in the right direction. So these guys are pretty much set up. Was that easier than starting it a number of times and looking at the image? Yeah. Was it easier than using my viewer on my Bushnell? With the Ceyomur, it was about the same. And I got a nice full screen view on my phone and I could move around, and that was pretty good actually. This is obviously quite a bit bigger than the screen on my Bushnell, so win. Was it easier with the Dsoon? It was a tiny little window in the top of the screen on the phone. It was smaller therefore than the Bushnell's viewer pretty much, and it wasn't live. So it was probably quicker than taking multiple attempts and checking the card and going around that sort of process. There's definitely an advantage to this Ceyomur. There's definitely some advantage over the other Dsoon with this one, but it ain't winning the race. But it's all about the footage and audio and images that these things capture in the field. So we're going to leave them here, come back in some days. I have no idea what our plans are yet. We've only been here a day, but we're here for more than 2 weeks, so we're going to be here for a number of days to catch up with the vlog then. So, So another early morning jaunt out into the woods, and here we are to fetch those wildlife cameras. And yeah, I'm just approaching the stump, and it looks like the food's all been taken, which is excellent, and there are wildlife cameras. So that's pretty promising. Okay, so I've got the 2 wildlife cameras off the tree, and I can't resist having a quick look at the footage. It's got to happen, hasn't it? First thing to note, battery is at 100%. This camera's been here for nearly 2 weeks, and battery's at 100%, which means this solar panel has been charging it, and that is excellent. That's really good, because it means that this camera really can function out in the field for longer than a traditional one with batteries, because it will be using that solar panel. I'm actually quite impressed by that. I was expecting that to be something of a gimmick. It seems that it actually works. Nice. Footage. 19 triggers. No way. Oh wow. Yeah, there's some cool stuff on here. There's an elk with a youngster, so with a calf, and they're kind of bounding around. Oh, that's very, very cool. Nice. But anyway, 19 triggers on here. Let's not stay here and get completely bitten by all the mosquitoes. Let's have a look at what's on the other camera. This one shows the battery as being reduced compared to when it started, but it doesn't give you a percentage like this one. It just tells you a little icon that says that it's kind of orange with a bar across it. Looks like similar things are captured, and what's going to be interesting is that I think I got the timestamps right this time on these 2. So what I'll be able to do is actually compare triggers that were the same event and see if there was a significant difference in when they started recording, because I know that Dsoon pride themselves on a very fast triggering time. Yeah, we will continue this in Scotland, and we will go through this footage and have a little talk about these 2 cameras. But I now have a little bit of a choice to make, and it's actually quite a difficult decision, having only been able to look at the footage on the backs of these cameras in the field. I now have to choose which of these cameras I'm going to leave here for a further 2 to 3 months, because the other day we found a dead squirrel on the road, and it would be a shame to waste a dead squirrel, so I've got it with me, and I'm going to nail it to this stump or another one where I can find enough solid wood to kind of nail it down, and I'm going to leave one of these cameras, and I'll be able to have this fetched, brought back to me in a few months, in end of September. So I think I'm going to stick with the Ceyomur. I'm going to leave that here, and if by some chance the video isn't out yet when I get that footage back, and frankly with the rate at which I publish videos at the moment, it's pretty likely that that'll be the case, I will tag anything on from the squirrel onto the end of the video. So yeah, we'll continue talking about the footage from the cameras when I get home in a few days. So, talk to you then. Okay, so we're back in Scotland and it's now November. It's time to talk through the footage from the different trail cameras. And the first trail camera I'm going to talk about is actually one that I may not have mentioned so far in this video, but it's another one from Ceyomur, and it's this one. It is the CY70. Now, I was offered this by Ceyomur before they offered me the Wi-Fi version that we talked about in the woods. So I wasn't sure how I could make a kind of individual video for this, so instead I thought I would just talk about it here, then get on with the review of the Wi-Fi cameras. So yeah, it's a very standard design. It's takes AA batteries, can have 4 of them or 8 of them depending on what you want to do. Yeah, it's got nice intuitive menus, it's easy to use. I've got some of the footage from it here on the screen, so we'll play some of that. This is a rock a few meters away behind the house in Finland, where we put kitchen scraps, and yeah, we attract crows and magpies and other birds there. But also in the night we get raccoon dogs, which is kind of cool. And we even got some lovely footage of the raccoon dog with 2 puppies, which should be on the screen right now, and that was really cute seeing them. It was great. Compared to the Dsoon DS8201 that I reviewed previously, this is a very capable little camera. It's got 2K video recording, which means it's a little bit crisper in the video output. Its audio works. You actually get decent sound out of this, which you might have heard just now on the clips with the crows. And yeah, it's got good trigger time, and I'm generally pretty pleased with it. Let's move on and talk about the 2 Wi-Fi trail cameras that we set up in the woods in Finland. These 2, the Ceyomur and the Dsoon. Looking at the footage, the first trigger was a hare that came through, and that's seen here on the Ceyomur and also on the Dsoon. Both picked it up absolutely fine, no problems there. Some kind of funny noises going on in the Dsoon camera. I think it's the water drops hitting the camera because it's raining. Next we have a pine marten that comes in, and that's picked up on Dsoon camera here, and then that's also on the Ceyomur, and they both triggered at the same time. There's very little difference in trigger time between these 2 here. Okay, so the next trigger on both cameras is this deer. I'm not sure if it's a roe or whitetail. I don't get a decent view of its backside. It's quite small though, and that points out something, which is that because the Dsoon camera is physically above the Ceyomur camera, the Ceyomur gets a better view of that deer, because it's a small deer, than the Dsoon does, because the deer is really low down. So next to come through was an absolutely cracking thing to see, was this pair of young moose that run through, and then they come through and they're frolicking about here on the in that kind of opening just near where the food is for quite a while really, and they're picked up by both cameras. Here they are on the Ceyomur. That first stuff was the Dsoon. Yeah, having a nibble on the branch. This is 10 past 10 at night, so the light's starting to fade, definitely. I mean, it is around midsummer, so it's still pretty light at that time, but this is doing an incredibly good job. Both cameras are doing a very good job of picking up these animals and recording the video. So the moose hang out there for a wee while, and Mama Moose comes to join them as well, and so we've got some lovely scenes of Mama Moose and her 2 babies, which is really cool. I've never seen that with the wildlife camera, so I'm super pleased to have captured that, regardless of what the camera is and what the quality is. It's really nice to see. And eventually the moose kind of have a little rest. They sort of all lie down for a few minutes, and then they get up and they wander off. Now, the triggering of the Dsoon versus the Ceyomur of when they stand up is a little bit different, but actually I put that down to the fact that there's a small tree between the cameras and where the moose were, and because the cameras aren't in exactly the same position, what they see as movement behind that little tree are going to be slightly different. But both were triggered and both captured that kind of movement, and they're quite sort of slow moving, so that's still quite good that it got them. So next we had this beautiful red fox come in, and that was definitely interested in the food, and it was eating some of it, and it came backwards and forwards several times over a morning. It sort of first appeared at 3 AM one of the mornings, and then came backwards and forwards there until well into the morning, sort of 10:30 in the morning. There's some interesting behaviour, which is that the fox seems to come in and it's eating the food, and every now and again it kind of like pulls its head back really quickly and snorts and sort of snuffs, as if it's getting something in its nose. And I wonder if there are ants on the food as well, and the ants are either biting, or because they're wood ants, spraying their formic acid in the fox's nose, which it's not enjoying very much, but it's still coming back for more food. It's definitely very wary of something that isn't nice on its nose when it's in there. Now, interestingly, the Ceyomur did not pick up all the triggers from the fox. So there are some triggers with the fox a little bit further away that the Dsoon gets and the Ceyomur doesn't. And that I'm going to attribute to the positioning of the cameras, because the Dsoon is higher up. It can see over the foliage a bit further away to where that fox is, and I suspect that for the Ceyomur that fox was just obscured by too much vegetation in those triggers. But then there are these triggers in the bright sunlight on the Dsoon, where the fox is definitely close enough to be triggering both cameras. In fact, it comes right up to the stump and has a munch, and those simply do not exist on the Ceyomur camera, because then the next trigger after that, which is the day afterwards at 20 to 7 in the morning, is me coming to collect the cameras. So that was a lot of wildlife in just a few days. Absolutely incredible, the diversity there, and I really dream of one day putting something like a semi-permanent hide there. But going back to the review, something that my coming in and triggering the cameras allowed was a test of the audio. Annoyingly, both of them had really poor audio, basically useless. And that's not a surprise for the Dsoon, because honestly, that's what I've come to expect from the other Dsoon model. But the CY70 had good audio before, and also the CY95 on a previous use in Knapdale also had good audio. So I'm worried actually that I've set something wrong on it in that case. So yes, as I said before, the frames per second on the Dsoon being just 10 at 4K compared to 30 on the Ceyomur was really obvious in video of moving subjects. But overall, the video quality was pretty good in both of them, and yeah, you really notice the difference between 1080p and 4K in these cameras, in that there is a lot more detail, especially when the subjects are a little bit further away from the camera. So yeah, that's really a nice feature to have in both of them. So yeah, as you know, I left the CY95 in Finland. We came back here, and the plan for this video is what would happen next in this video would be I'd show you the footage from the CY95 up until now. but it's still there. And for various reasons, the family member who was going to be there and who could have fetched it and brought it back to me wasn't able to travel. And so now it's probably going to stay there in the woods until early to late spring at the very earliest next year. So in the end, that's going to be a really good long-term test for that camera. And I'm glad I picked the CY95 with its solar charging. And I put a really big 128 gigabyte SD card in it. So hopefully that will have kept going quite a long time, and it'll be really interesting to see what that's captured. Kind of really excited for that now. Yeah, there will be a video follow-up of that for absolutely sure, because yeah, that's pretty cool. Also, Ceyomur get a heck of a test out of this, because I don't know whether they've got people testing these for months and months in the Northern European winter, but that's exactly what they're going to get here. So it's time for some conclusions and to talk about these cameras and wrap up. And I'll just say this straight out: the CY95 Wi-Fi trail camera from Ceyomur is the best trail camera I've ever used. It's great. The only tiny thing is I am a little bit worried as to why those extra triggers of the Fox weren't recorded. And you know, when I get it back, assuming a bear hasn't eaten it or something, I will be checking it to see if there's any good reason why it wasn't recording that fox in the bright sunlight. Maybe it's something to do with bright sunlight on the detector basically blinds it, and it was in a slightly different position on the tree compared to the Dsoon. So that might also be true of any camera, but because they're in different positions, one of them might have had a shadow on and the other one not. So the internal battery on the Wi-Fi Ceyomur is really good. It's designed to recharge itself with sunlight, and in Finland in that week when it was out there, because it was getting sunlight, it was still at 100% when I collected it. So it'd obviously been topping up every day, so that's really cool, and I hope it's continuing to do that now. I suspect at some point it'll end up with a cap of snow on top of it, and so for the very deepest bit of winter it might not record anything. The 4K is smooth and it looks really good. 30 frames a second is fantastic. I appreciate that in lower light that's quite hard to achieve, but it doesn't seem too noisy and grainy. Its nighttime footage is the best I've seen out of any of these cameras that I've tested. It's really nice. It's not over contrasty, which I think the Dsoon maybe is. And yeah, the Wi-Fi aiming feature is very useful. It was quite intuitive to use, it was easy. Yeah, it felt like that saved me time in terms of setting up the camera, just using my phone to aim it. Job done, no problem. Other less good things, the weirdness with the audio, but as I said, I think I set something wrong with that, because previously I got good audio out of it. I have to add it as a bad point here because in this review the audio is messed up, but I think that's probably me rather than it. The shape of the solar panel is a bit odd, but then you've got to put it somewhere if you're going to have a solar panel, so I'm sure that's fine. I guess by having it sticking out, it does provide a bit of a guard to stop drips and things going onto the main lens, so maybe that's a good thing. The tripod mount's in a weird place. I haven't got it here, but I'll show you on the... Here's the CY70. The tripod mount's in the bottom, which is kind of what you'd expect it. On the CY95, the tripod mount's in the back, so you have to kind of like think about that if you're going to mount it on a tripod. For example, if you're going to mount it on a mini tripod, you kind of can't, because if you put a mini tripod holding onto a heavy thing here, it's just going to tip over. So onto the Dsoon wildlife camera with Wi-Fi. It's the best Dsoon camera I've tried. The 4K is good, but it's 10 frames a second and it really shows it when the subject is moving. I also think that the colour tone of the video in both daytime and nighttime isn't quite as good as the Ceyomur, but it's still pretty good, and it's better than the 1080p version of the camera that I had before. The sound's rubbish, but then what can I say, because the sound from the other camera was rubbish, but this at least is consistently rubbish, so I think audio is just not something that Dsoon are concerned with in their cameras. And yeah, the setting up of the Wi-Fi and the using it to aim was very faffy compared to the system with the Ceyomur. So aiming it sort of the normal way might have actually been quicker with that camera, because there was so much process involved with getting it to work on the getting it to work on the phone, and the view wasn't live. You had to refresh the app every time you wanted to move it. It's kind of like, it's a nice idea, but it wasn't very well implemented. So yeah, I'm happy with all of them for what they do. I note that there are limitations on some of them compared to the others. If I want footage to put into vlogs and to kind of make videos out of, I'm going to lean towards the two Ceyomur cameras because the quality is just nicer and the audio is decent when it works. But yeah, if you were in the market for a trail camera, I'd have no problem recommending any of these with their relative merits and prices. So there will be links in the video description to all of them if I can find them online. I don't think the CY70 is available at the moment, but if I find an equivalent, I'll put that on there too. And yeah, I'll finish this video with a few more of the bits of footage from the different cameras, because I probably just put snippets in as I've been talking. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it or found this useful if you're comparing trail cameras for a future purchase. And yeah, thanks very much for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.